The great crystal dome of the Galactic Council chambers reflected the light of 7 different suns streaming through the massive windows. Delegates from 43 species sat in their assigned positions around the circular hall, each section designed to accommodate their unique biological needs. The Zenthari delegation occupied elevated platforms that matched their towering height, while the small furry plexi huddled in their heated alcoves near the floor. Everything was as it had been for the past 300 years, except for one glaring absence. The human section remained empty. Council leader Vexithara extended her crystalline appendages and called the session to order. Her voice resonated through the translation devices worn by every delegate. We gather today for the quarterly reports from all member species. We shall begin with the agricultural updates from the Ethan Collective. The ethereal beings that made up the Ethon delegation began their presentation about crop yields and farming innovations. Their melodic tones filled the chamber as they spoke of new techniques for growing food in harsh environments. But every few moments, delegates would glance toward the empty human seats. It was impossible to ignore. 3 hours passed as species after species delivered their reports. Trade agreements were discussed. Scientific discoveries were shared. Military updates were provided. But the elephant in the room grew larger with each passing moment. Finally, Councillor Jextar of the militant Krex Empire stood up. His insectoid frame clicked as he moved. "Where are the humans?" he demanded. Ambassador Kate Morris was scheduled to present their quarterly expansion report. Their trade networks supply 40% of our food distribution. Their diplomatic corps mediates half our territorial disputes. Where are they? Vexithara's crystal form shifted slightly, which indicated uncertainty among her species. We have attempted to contact the human delegation multiple times over the past week. Their embassy staff has not responded to our communications. Ambassador Morris has not been seen since the last council session 3 months ago. Murmurs spread throughout the chamber. The slug-like Gordani began secreting stress pheromones that triggered the air filtration systems. The machine hybrid Nexus delegation computed probability matrices with audible clicking sounds. Everyone was trying to process this unprecedented situation. Perhaps they are dealing with some internal crisis, suggested Elder Fax of the peaceful Luminar. The humans are known for their complex political systems. Maybe they need time to resolve domestic issues. But deep in space far from the council chambers, Admiral Jack Hayes stood on the bridge of the massive transport vessel New Dawn. Through the viewports, he could see hundreds of other ships stretching into the darkness. Every vessel was packed with humans and their most essential belongings. Children pressed their faces against windows, taking final looks at the galaxy they were leaving behind. "Admiral, the last evacuation shuttle has docked," reported Captain Bill Turner. "All personnel from Research Station Alpha 7 are aboard. We can begin the final jump sequence." Jack nodded slowly. Operation Silent Exodus was nearly complete. For 6 months, human ships had been quietly departing from colonies across the galaxy. They had told no one. They had left no forwarding addresses. They had simply packed up and disappeared like ghosts in the night. "What about the communication?" "Arrays," Jack asked. "Commander Susan Wright reports that all deep space transmitters have been destroyed. The Council will not be able to track our jump signatures or follow our route. We will leave no trail for them to follow." Jack thought about Kate Morris, who had served as humanity's ambassador for 15 years. She was probably in one of the ships somewhere in this massive fleet. Like everyone else, she had been sworn to secrecy about their discovery. the terrible truth that had forced humanity to abandon everything they had built in this galaxy. 6 months earlier, Dr. Lisa Park had been leading an archaeological expedition on the dead world of Kepler 442b. Her team had been studying the ruins of an ancient civilization that had vanished mysteriously 50,000 years ago. What they found in the deepest chambers changed everything. The aliens who had built those ruins were not the first to disappear. Dr. Park's team discovered records of a pattern that stretched back millions of years. Every 50,000 years, like clockwork, advanced civilizations would suddenly vanish from the galaxy. Not destroyed in wars, not killed by plagues or disasters. They would simply disappear completely, leaving behind empty cities and silent worlds. The records spoke of something called the harvest, ancient automated systems that would activate when certain cosmic alignments occurred. These systems would detect advanced civilizations and summon entities from beyond normal space. The entities would consume entire species, converting their biological matter and knowledge into raw materials for purposes that the ancient records could not explain. Dr. Park had brought her findings to the human government immediately. Teams of scientists and historians had studied the data for months. They had found additional evidence on other worlds. The pattern was undeniable. The next alignment was coming, and it was coming soon. Humanity had tried to warn the Council. Ambassador Morris had requested emergency sessions to discuss potential threats from deep space. She had presented preliminary data about ancient ruins and strange energy readings from dead worlds, but the Council had dismissed their concerns. The humans see threats everywhere, Councillor Jextar had said during one heated debate. They are a young species still driven by primitive fears. We have maintained peace for 3,000 years. There are no unknown threats in our galaxy. The Ethon Collective had been more polite, but equally dismissive. Perhaps the humans need more time to evolve beyond their warrior instincts, Elder Sylph had suggested. We should encourage them to focus on art and philosophy rather than imaginary dangers. Even their closest allies had turned away. The trading partners who bought human goods, the scientific collaborators who had worked alongside human researchers for decades. When humanity needed the galaxy to listen, the galaxy had chosen to ignore them. So humanity made the hardest decision in their history. They would save themselves. Admiral, all ships report ready for jump, Captain Turner announced. Engineering confirms our destination coordinates are locked in. We are ready to leave. Jack looked one final time at the distant stars that had been humanity's home for 3 centuries. Somewhere in that direction, the Council was probably still debating where the humans had gone. They would send search parties eventually. They would demand answers. But by then it would be too late. Execute the jump, Jack commanded. Space bent around the human fleet as thousands of ships vanished into hyperspace. They left behind empty colonies and abandoned research stations. They left behind trade agreements and diplomatic treaties. They left behind friends and allies who had refused to listen when listening mattered most. In the Council chambers, Vexathara was still trying to contact the human embassy when the first reports began arriving. Human colonies throughout the galaxy had gone dark. Research stations were abandoned. Trade ships had failed to arrive at their scheduled destinations. Even the massive terraforming project on New Kansas had been left incomplete with all human personnel mysteriously gone. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to lose humanity. But they would not understand why until it was far too late. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of the New Horizon and watched the Galactic Search Fleet approach through the asteroid field that surrounded humanity's primary settlement. 12 years had passed since the quiet departure, and the delegation that Captain Rexali led represented the first official contact between humanity and their former neighbors. The human fleet that escorted the galactic ships through the defensive perimeter demonstrated technology that had advanced far beyond anything the galaxy possessed. Human vessels moved with fluid grace through the asteroid maze, their hulls shimmering with energy fields that provided both protection and propulsion. The galactic ships followed carefully, clearly struggling to match the pace of their escorts. Morrison had been expecting this visit for years. Human monitoring stations along the galactic rim had tracked the slow deterioration of galactic civilization since humanity's departure. The Xerian plague had been contained but never cured, leaving entire sectors under permanent quarantine. Economic productivity had declined by over 60% as innovations stagnated and trade routes became unreliable. More troubling were the ongoing conflicts that human peacekeepers would have resolved quickly. 3 separate wars raged in border, regions where territorial disputes had escalated beyond diplomatic solution. Piracy had increased dramatically as criminal organizations exploited gaps in the systematized patrol schedules that replaced human security operations. The human settlement that came into view as the fleet cleared the asteroid field would have impressed visitors from any civilization. 17 worlds orbited the system's twin stars, each one terraformed to support different aspects of human society. Massive space stations served as construction platforms for projects that dwarfed anything attempted during humanity's time. In galactic space, Dr. Amy Collins joined Morrison in the observation deck as the galactic ships docked with the primary station. She had been promoted to Director of Human Colonial Sciences and had overseen the medical and biological research that made rapid terraforming possible. Her hair was now silver with age, but her eyes held the same sharp intelligence that had made her legendary in galactic medical circles. "They look smaller than I remembered," Amy said as she watched the galactic delegates disembark from their ships. Morrison nodded. 12 years of slow decline will do that. They've lost confidence in themselves and their institutions. The delegation that Captain Rexali led included representatives from all major galactic species. Their expressions showed a mixture of amazement at what humanity had built and uncomfortable awareness of what their own civilization had lost. Navigator Beisha stared openly at the human technological displays, her artistic sensibilities clearly impressed by the elegant integration of function and beauty. Dr. Zenkara focused on the archaeological exhibits that lined the station's corridors. Humanity had discovered and explored dozens of ancient alien sites in the regions beyond the galactic rim. Each discovery had contributed to the technological advances that made human expansion possible. The xenoarchaeologist realized that humanity had found in 12 years what galactic civilization had failed to discover in centuries. Morrison led the delegation to a conference room that overlooked the primary construction yards where human engineers were building what appeared to be a massive deep space exploration vessel. The ship's design incorporated technologies that the galactic delegates could not identify, suggesting that human science had advanced into entirely new fields. "Welcome to the new territories," Morrison said as the delegation took their seats around a conference table made from crystallized asteroid material. "I understand you've come about the plague situation." Captain Rex Ali spoke for the delegation. "Admiral Morrison, the galactic community faces the greatest crisis in our recorded history. The Xerion plague has resisted all conventional treatments. Our medical experts have studied the archived human research extensively, but they lack the adaptive techniques that made human medicine so effective. Morrison exchanged a glance with Dr. Collins before responding. We've been monitoring the situation through our observation posts. The plague is indeed serious, but it's also symptomatic of deeper problems that have developed since our departure. Dr. Collins activated a holographic display that showed medical data from across the galaxy. The plague succeeds because it exploits weaknesses in galactic medical practice that human techniques were designed to address. Cross-species diseases require adaptive treatment approaches that other medical traditions have difficulty implementing. Engineer Korth Dan of the Hegemony studied the display with his enhanced cybernetic vision. Your medical advances appear to be decades ahead of current galactic standards. How did you achieve such rapid progress? Amy smiled. Innovation accelerates when you're not constrained by committees and bureaucratic approval processes. We've been free to pursue breakthrough research without worrying about political complications or species-specific concerns. The statement highlighted one of the fundamental differences between human civilization and the galactic community. Humans had always prioritized practical results over diplomatic consensus, leading to conflicts with species that preferred stability and predictable progress. Counselor Melody High spoke next, her musical voice conveying the formal request that the delegation had been authorized to make. Admiral Morrison, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally request humanity's assistance in addressing the plague crisis and the other challenges facing our civilization. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying the faces of the delegates around the table. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. Counselor Melody High, I appreciate the formal request, but I think we need to address some fundamental issues before discussing specific assistance. He activated his own holographic display, showing data about galactic civilization's decline over the 12 years since humanity's departure. The plague is a symptom, not the disease. Your real problem is that galactic society chose stability over growth, consensus over innovation, and management over solutions. The data was comprehensive and troubling. Every metric of galactic civilization showed decline or stagnation. Scientific advancement had slowed dramatically. Economic productivity had fallen as trade networks became less efficient. Even cultural development had plateaued as the cross-pollination of ideas between species became increasingly rare. You asked us to leave because our unpredictability made you uncomfortable, Morrison continued. That unpredictability was the engine that drove galactic progress for 3 centuries. Without it, your civilization has been slowly dying. Dr. Zenkara found her voice. Admiral, are you saying that humanity will not help us? Morrison shook his head. I'm saying that temporary assistance won't solve your fundamental problems. You need to decide what kind of civilization you want to be. Amy Collins spoke next, addressing the medical aspects of the crisis. We can provide treatments for the Xerion plague, but curing the current outbreak won't prevent future pandemics. Your medical systems need structural changes that go beyond what any external assistance can provide. The delegation absorbed this information with varying degrees of understanding. The logical Kethvar representatives grasped the systematic nature of the problems immediately. The artistic Melodians struggled with the harsh assessment of their civilization's trajectory. The contemplative Zentari seemed lost in thought about the philosophical implications. Morrison stood and walked to the observation window that showed the bustling activity of the human settlement. We've built something new out here. 17 worlds with different approaches to human society. each one an experiment in how civilization might develop without the constraints that limited us in galactic space. He gestured toward the construction yards where the massive exploration vessel was taking shape. That ship will carry 10,000 humans to galaxies beyond this one. We're not content to settle in one region of space, even one as vast as what we've claimed here. The statement revealed the true scope of human ambition since their departure. They had not simply built a new home. They had created a launching platform for expansion across the universe. The civilization that had been rejected for its unpredictability had evolved into something that galactic society could barely comprehend. Captain Rex Ali asked the question that everyone was thinking. Will humanity consider returning to galactic society? Morrison's answer was immediate and definitive. No. We've moved beyond that phase of our development. The galaxy made its choice democratically, and we respect that decision. We've made our own choices and built something better. The rejection was delivered without anger or resentment, which somehow made it more final than any hostile response would have been. Humanity had simply outgrown their former home and had no interest in returning to a system that had rejected their contributions. Dr. Collins offered a different kind of hope. However, we are establishing observation and assistance posts along the galactic rim, medical stations, supply depots, and research facilities that any galactic citizen can access freely. She activated another display showing the planned network of human installations. These facilities will be staffed by volunteers who want to. Captain Rex Ali of the Kethvar Deep Space Fleet stood on the bridge of his exploration vessel Logical Pursuit and studied the star charts that showed nothing but empty space ahead. 8 years had passed since humanity quietly departed from galactic civilization, and the search for them had become the most important mission in the galaxy's history. The Xerion plague had been contained but not cured, leaving entire star systems under permanent quarantine. Economic productivity continued to decline as trade routes remained disrupted and innovation stagnated without human participation. 3 separate wars had erupted in sectors where human peacekeepers once maintained stability. Rex Ali commanded a fleet of 12 ships representing all major galactic species. The mission had been designated Project Homecoming, though privately many crew members wondered if they would find anything beyond empty space and old radiation signatures. Humanity had vanished so completely that some theorists suggested they might have left the galaxy entirely. Navigator Bayshaw worked at her station, following traces that were 8 years old and growing fainter with each passing day. She was Melodian, and her species' natural sensitivity to cosmic harmonies made her uniquely suited to tracking the subtle disturbances that large fleets left in space-time. Even so, the trail was difficult to follow. The search had begun at the last confirmed positions of human ships near the galactic rim. Automated listening posts had recorded the final transmissions from human vessels as they departed known space. The messages had been routine navigation updates and departure confirmations, giving no hint of their intended destination. Baysha had found the first solid clue 3 months into the search mission. An abandoned rest station at the galaxy's edge showed signs of recent modification and improvement. The changes were distinctly human in their approach, practical enhancements that increased the station's efficiency and safety without regard for aesthetic concerns or bureaucratic procedures. The modifications had been made sometime after humanity's official departure, suggesting that human ships had passed through this area during their exodus. More importantly, the improvements indicated that humans were still helping other travelers even as they left galactic civilization behind. Rex Ali studied the pattern of modifications with his systematic mind. The humans had upgraded the station's power systems, improved its navigation beacons, and reinforced its structural integrity. They had also left behind basic supplies and emergency equipment that could help stranded travelers. It was exactly the kind of thoughtful preparation that humans were known for. Dr. Zenkara, the expedition's xenoarchaeologist, made her own discoveries in the abandoned station's databanks. The humans had accessed historical records and stellar cartography files during their brief stop. They had downloaded information about unexplored regions beyond the galactic rim and had seemed particularly interested in areas where ancient alien civilizations might have existed. Zenkara found this pattern troubling. During their time in galactic society, humans had shown unusual interest in archaeological sites and ancient mysteries. They approached such discoveries with a combination of scientific curiosity and intuitive speculation that often led to breakthrough insights. If humanity was searching for something specific in the unexplored regions, they might be following leads that other species had overlooked. The search fleet continued beyond the abandoned station, following a trail of subtle clues that only Beisha's Melodian senses could detect. They found more evidence of human passage in the form of improved navigation markers and cleared debris fields. Each discovery reinforced the same pattern. Humans were maintaining and improving the infrastructure of space even as they traveled, through regions where no other civilization had established a presence. Engineer Korth Don of the Hegemony analyzed the human modifications with growing amazement. The improvements were elegant and efficient, solving complex problems with simple solutions that other species would never have considered. More impressive was the fact that humans had taken time to make these improvements while conducting what must have been a massive evacuation operation. The modifications suggested a level of coordination and planning that contradicted the Council's assessment of human unpredictability. Rather than fleeing in chaos, humanity appeared to have executed a carefully planned departure that continued to benefit other travelers long after they were gone. 5 months into the search, the fleet encountered something unprecedented. Navigator. Beisha detected a region of space where dangerous stellar phenomena had been systematically neutralized. Unstable stars had been provided with stabilizing technology. Asteroid fields had been cleared of the most hazardous debris. Navigation hazards that had existed for millions of years had been carefully marked and made safe for passage. Captain Rex Ali realized they had found evidence of massive engineering projects that could only have been accomplished by humanity. The scope of the work was staggering, covering hundreds of star systems across a region larger than the galactic core. Someone had been gardening this section of space, making it safe and habitable for future colonization. Dr. Zenkara studied the engineering techniques and confirmed that they matched human approaches to large-scale construction. The work showed the same combination of practical efficiency and long-term thinking that characterized human infrastructure projects throughout their time in galactic society. What impressed the search team most was the time frame. The engineering projects appeared to have been completed within the 8 years since humanity's departure. This suggested that human civilization had not only survived their exodus, but had thrived to the point where they could undertake massive space modification projects. Beisha detected something else in the stellar patterns ahead. Active energy, signatures that indicated ongoing construction and habitation. The search fleet had found not just traces of humanity's passage, but evidence of their current location. Rex Ali ordered the fleet to proceed with extreme caution. First contact protocols would be essential, given that humanity might not welcome visitors from the galactic civilization that had asked them to leave. The humans had every right to be suspicious of contact from their former neighbors. The energy. Signatures led to a star system that did not appear on any galactic charts. As the search fleet approached, they detected multiple worlds with artificial satellites and space stations. Massive construction projects were visible even from the edge of the system. Humanity had not merely survived their departure. They had built something new and impressive. Long-range sensors detected approaching vessels almost immediately. The human ships that came to meet them were unlike anything in the galactic fleet databases. The designs were clearly evolved from human technology, but they incorporated advances that surpassed anything the galaxy had seen before. Captain Jake Morrison's face appeared on the main communication screen of the Logical Pursuit. He had aged. In the 8 years since the search team had last seen him, his hair now completely gray, but he wore the insignia of an admiral, and his expression was calm and confident. "Captain Rex Ollie," Morrison said with a slight smile. "This is an unexpected pleasure. What brings a Galactic Council search fleet to our little corner of space?" Rex Ollie felt relief at Morrison's friendly tone, but he also detected something else in the human admiral's voice. There was no surprise at seeing galactic ships, suggesting that humanity had been aware of their approach long before the search. "Fleet detected human settlements. Admiral Morrison," Rex Ollie replied formally. "The Galactic Council has authorized this mission to locate humanity and request assistance with a crisis that threatens all galactic civilization." Morrison's expression grew more serious. "I see. Well, you've certainly found us. I assume this has something to do with the plague situation we've been monitoring." The casual reference to monitoring galactic affairs surprised Rex Ollie. Humanity had been tracking events in their former home despite being thousands of light years away. This suggested surveillance capabilities that the galaxy had not known humans possessed. "You've been watching galactic affairs?" Rex Ollie asked. Morrison nodded. "We've maintained observation posts along the galactic rim. We know about the Xerian plague, the economic difficulties, and the ongoing conflicts in the border regions. We've also been providing discreet assistance where possible." The revelation that humans had been secretly helping their former neighbors while officially departed from galactic society added another layer of complexity to the situation. Rex Ollie wondered how much other assistance humanity had provided without the galaxy's knowledge. Morrison continued, "I think this conversation would be better conducted in person. You're welcome to visit our primary settlement if you're interested in seeing what we've built out here. I think you'll find it educational." The invitation was offered with the same casual confidence that had characterized human diplomacy during their time in galactic society. Morrison seemed completely at ease despite being contacted by representatives of the civilization that had rejected his species. Rex Ollie accepted the invitation, though he realized that the search mission had just become something much more complicated. They had not just... The first reports of the Xerian plague came from a remote mining station on the edge of the Spiral Nebula. Chief Medical Officer Lithana of the Zentari Healing Collective read the initial symptoms with growing alarm as she sat in her medical bay aboard the hospital ship Tranquility. The plague affected multiple species differently but with equally devastating results. Kethvar victims experienced rapid breakdown of their logical thought processes, becoming confused and unable to perform basic reasoning tasks. Melodians lost their musical abilities and fell into deep depression as their artistic senses failed. Zentari patients found themselves unable to meditate, trapped in chaotic surface thoughts that prevented them from reaching inner peace. Lithana had seen cross-species diseases before, but nothing like this. The plague seemed to target the core, characteristics that defined each species. It was as if some malevolent force had designed a weapon specifically to destroy what made each race unique. The mining station where the plague first appeared had been exploring uncharted regions of the Spiral Nebula. They had been conducting routine surveys of gas clouds and stellar formations when they encountered something unexpected. Deep within the nebula, they found the remains of an ancient alien facility that had been drifting in space for millions of years. The facility had been destroyed long ago, but traces of its exotic technology remained. The miners collected samples for analysis, not knowing that they were bringing something deadly back to civilization. Within days of their return to populated space, the plague began spreading through their station and beyond. Lithana accessed the archived medical databases that humans had maintained during their time in galactic society. Dr. Amy Collins and her team had studied dozens of cross-species pathogens and had developed treatment protocols that worked across multiple biological systems. Their approach had been revolutionary, focusing on the underlying disease mechanisms rather than species-specific symptoms. The problem was that human medical techniques required a type of intuitive problem-solving that other species found difficult to replicate. Human doctors had excelled at adapting treatments in real time based on patient responses. They could modify their approaches when standard protocols failed, often discovering new treatment methods through creative experimentation. Lithana began implementing the human protocols with her Zentari medical team, but the results were frustrating. The archived procedures were detailed and comprehensive, but they assumed a level of flexibility and intuition that Zentari medicine had never emphasized. Her team could follow the steps precisely, but they struggled to make the adaptive decisions that human doctors would have made instinctively. On the Kethvar medical world of Logic Prime, Dr. Zentai faced similar challenges. His systematic approach to medicine had always been effective for treating Kethvar patients, but the Xerion plague defied logical analysis. The disease mutated rapidly, changing its characteristics faster than systematic research could track. Zentai had converted the human treatment protocols into algorithmic procedures that his team could follow step by step. The algorithms were mathematically sound and logically structured, but they could not adapt to the plague's constant evolution. Each time his team thought they had found an effective treatment, the disease changed and rendered their carefully calculated approaches useless. The human medical archives contained references to clinical intuition and adaptive treatment strategies that Zentai found impossible to quantify. How could healing be based on feelings and hunches rather than measurable data and proven procedures? The human approach to medicine seemed chaotic and unscientific to his logical mind. Meanwhile, the plague continued to spread. Trade ships carried it from system to system, and quarantine efforts proved inadequate. The disease seemed to thrive in the diverse biological environments that characterized galactic civilization. Each new species it encountered provided fresh opportunities for mutation and adaptation. Council member Thrace of the Hegemony watched the crisis unfold from his command center on the military world of Iron Station. His cybernetic enhancements protected him from biological diseases, but he could see the plague's impact on the galaxy's social and economic systems. Entire star systems were falling into quarantine as the disease spread beyond medical control. Trade networks that had operated smoothly for centuries were collapsing as ships were denied docking rights at healthy worlds. The careful balance of galactic civilization was coming apart as fear replaced cooperation. Thrace had served in the Galactic Council for over 50 years and had been one of the voices supporting humanity's departure. He had genuinely believed that the galaxy would be more stable without human unpredictability. Now he was beginning to question that decision as he watched the current crisis spiral beyond the control of conventional galactic institutions. The hegemony's military medical corps had the most advanced treatment facilities in the galaxy, but even their resources were proving inadequate. Their doctors followed the most sophisticated protocols and used the most advanced technology, but they lacked the creative problem-solving approaches that had made human medicine so effective. For the first time in 5 years, Thrace authorized his intelligence network to begin searching for traces of humanity's departure route. The authorization was classified at the highest levels and carried no official sanction from the Galactic Council. If asked, Thrace would deny that any such search was taking place. The search teams began their work at the last known positions of human ships near the galactic rim. They found traces of the human exodus in the form of modified navigation beacons and improved space lane markers, but the trail quickly disappeared into the vast unexplored regions beyond mapped space. Counselor Melody High of the Free Worlds made a different kind of discovery in the Council archives. She had been reviewing historical records related to humanity's departure, hoping to find insights that might help with the current crisis. What she found instead was footage from the final council session where humanity's withdrawal had been announced. Melody High watched Ambassador Lisa Carter deliver humanity's farewell address and noticed something that had been overlooked at the time. Carter's expression throughout the proceedings had been calm and professional, but there was something in her eyes that Melody High found disturbing. It was not anger or resentment, as might be expected from someone whose species was being asked to leave. Instead, it looked almost like pity. The recording showed Carter's reaction when the Zentari representative explained the Council's concerns about human unpredictability. Carter had nodded politely and accepted the criticism, but her expression suggested that she understood something the Council did not. She looked like someone watching others make a terrible mistake that they would eventually regret. Melody High reviewed other footage from humanity's departure and found similar expressions on human faces throughout the evacuation process. There was sadness at leaving homes and friendships behind, but there was also something that looked like anticipation. The humans had not seemed defeated or broken by their rejection. Instead, they had appeared to be people who were moving on to something better. As the Xerion plague continued to spread and galactic civilization struggled to respond effectively, more council members began to privately question the decision to let humanity depart. The plague was the most serious crisis the galaxy had faced in centuries, and the absence of human medical expertise was becoming impossible to ignore. Dr. Lithana made a breakthrough on the 7th week of the plague crisis. Working with archived, human research data, she discovered that the disease responded to a combination treatment that required precise timing and constant adjustment based on patient feedback. The treatment worked, but it demanded the kind of adaptive medical practice that humans had pioneered. The problem was training other medical teams to use these adaptive techniques. Zentari doctors were skilled at following established healing traditions, but they struggled with the rapid decision-making that human medical practice required. Kethvar physicians could master the technical aspects of the treatments, but they had difficulty reading the subtle patient responses that guided treatment adjustments. Melodian healers showed the most promise at adapting to human medical approaches. Their artistic sensibilities helped them recognize patterns in patient responses that were too subtle for systematic analysis. However, Melodian healing traditions emphasized comfort and spiritual support rather than aggressive intervention, making it difficult for them to implement the intensive treatments that the plague required. As medical teams across the galaxy struggled to master human treatment techniques, the plague continued to evolve and spread. Each day of delay meant more lives lost and more star systems falling into quarantine. The galaxy's medical establishment was learning that there was a profound difference between having access to human knowledge and having the ability to apply that knowledge effectively. Council Director Prime Vorthak called an emergency session to address the crisis. Representatives from all major species gathered in the same chamber where humanity's departure had been announced 5 years earlier. The irony was not lost on anyone present. Trade Coordinator Vel Nash of the Kethvar Commerce Guild noticed the first problems 18 months after the humans left. She sat in her office aboard Commerce Station Beta Prime, reviewing shipping manifests and delivery schedules on her multiple display screens. The numbers told a story that made her logical mind uncomfortable. The Outer Rim freight routes were falling behind schedule. These were the dangerous paths through asteroid fields and unstable space where pirate attacks were common. Human freight runners had maintained regular service on these routes for over 2 centuries. They seemed to enjoy the challenge of navigating dangerous space and had developed techniques that other species found reckless but effective. Velnash pulled up the replacement schedule that had been implemented after humanity's departure. Kethvar, commercial vessels now handled the safer core routes, with their precise timing and systematic approaches. Melodian exploration ships took responsibility for the scenic routes where their artistic sensibilities could appreciate the beauty of nebulae and star formations. The Zentari meditation ships avoided commercial freight entirely, focusing on passenger service to spiritual retreat worlds. The problem was clear in the data. The Outer Rim routes that once saw daily human freight runs now received service every 4 to 6 days. Kethavar vessels approached these routes with extreme caution, following detailed safety protocols that added days to each journey. Melodian ships found the harsh environment uninspiring and often delayed their schedules to avoid particularly dangerous sectors. Velnash composed a report for the Commerce Guild leadership, but hesitated before sending it. The report would note a 23% decrease in Outer Rim trade efficiency. It would recommend either accepting reduced service levels or developing new approaches to dangerous route navigation. Neither option seemed satisfactory to her logical mind. On the meditation world of Serenity Prime, High Contemplator Zexhai faced a different kind of problem. He stood in the center of the Great Crystal Garden, watching maintenance robots attempt to repair the atmospheric processing systems that kept the air perfect for Zentari meditation practices. The human environmental engineers who had designed these systems were gone. They had left detailed technical manuals and training materials, but the replacement Kethvar technicians approached maintenance with rigid adherence to written procedures. They followed each step precisely, but missed the subtle adjustments that human engineers had made to optimize performance. The atmospheric composition was still within acceptable ranges, but Zexhai could sense the difference. The air felt less pure somehow, less perfectly balanced for deep meditation. Other contemplators had begun to complain about difficulty reaching the deepest states of cosmic awareness. Zexhai accessed the maintenance records and found something troubling. The human engineers had not simply followed the original specifications. They had continuously refined and improved the systems based on feedback from the Zentari residents. Their final configurations were significantly different from the baseline designs, optimized through years of small improvements that were never formally documented. The HFY technicians worked hard and meant well, but they lacked the intuitive understanding that had made human engineering so effective. They could maintain the systems as originally designed, but they could not replicate the ongoing optimization that humans had provided. In the contested border region between the hegemony and the free worlds, General Korthak discovered that peace was more fragile than anyone had realized. He commanded a hegemony battle station that monitored the neutral zone where disputes between the two powers had been brewing for decades. Human peacekeepers had maintained stability in this region through a combination of diplomatic skill and military presence. They had developed relationships with commanders on both sides and had established protocols for managing tensions before they escalated into actual combat. The replacement peacekeeping force consisted of Melodian diplomatic ships supported by HFY patrol vessels. The Melodians were excellent at formal negotiations, and their artistic approach to conflict resolution worked well in structured diplomatic settings. However, they struggled with the informal conversations and personal relationships that had been the foundation of human peacekeeping success. Korthak watched a minor territorial dispute evolve into a 3-day standoff between hegemony mining, ships, and free world patrol boats. Under the old system, a human peacekeeper would have contacted both commanders directly, probably sharing drinks and stories while working out a face-saving compromise. The Melodian negotiators instead requested formal diplomatic meetings with proper protocols and advanced scheduling. By the time the official negotiations began, both sides had already committed to their positions publicly. What should have been a simple misunderstanding about mining rights became a matter of political prestige. The standoff ended peacefully, but only after 3 days of tension that could have escalated into actual shooting. Dr. Sivan worked late in her research laboratory on the HFY homeworld, analyzing economic data from across the galaxy. As a specialist in interspecies commerce, she had been tracking the economic impacts of humanity's departure with growing concern. The initial predictions had been optimistic. Human technology and methods would be replaced by collaborative efforts between the remaining species. Each group would contribute their strengths to maintain the same level of productivity and innovation that the galaxy had enjoyed with human participation. The reality was more complicated. Sivan's analysis showed that innovation rates had declined by nearly 30% across all sectors. The problem was not that other species lacked intelligence or creativity. The issue was more subtle and more troubling. Humans had served as catalysts in the galactic innovation ecosystem. They took ideas from one species and combined them with concepts from another, creating solutions that no single group would have developed alone. Their tendency toward rapid experimentation and willingness to take risks had accelerated the pace of technological development across all fields. Without human involvement, each species continued to innovate within their own preferred methods and cultural frameworks. The HFY made logical incremental improvements to existing systems. The Melodians created beautiful but often impractical artistic solutions. The Zentari developed profound philosophical insights that rarely translated into practical applications. The cross-pollination of ideas that had driven galactic progress for 3 centuries was simply gone. Each species was advancing at their natural pace, but the synergistic effects that had created breakthrough innovations were no longer occurring. Sivan prepared to publish her findings, but realized that her report would be unwelcome. The Galactic Council had made their decision based on the belief that humanity's unpredictable influence created more problems than benefits. Suggesting that this decision had been economically damaging would be politically difficult. In the lawless sectors, beyond the galactic core, pirate Captain Drexmore planned his most ambitious raid yet. His mixed-species crew had been monitoring shipping patterns and had identified a weakness in the new patrol schedules that replaced human security operations. The humans had never followed predictable patterns in their anti-piracy efforts. Their patrols appeared random and their response times varied widely, making it impossible for pirates to plan around their activities. Human security forces seemed to enjoy the cat-and-mouse game of hunting criminals through the asteroid belts and nebulae of wild space. The replacement security force operated very differently. HFY patrol ships followed systematic grid searches with predictable timing. Melodian exploration vessels reported suspicious activity, but rarely engaged in direct pursuit. Zentari meditation ships avoided the lawless sectors entirely. Drexmore had spent months mapping the new patrol patterns and had found gaps large enough to fly a battlecruiser through. His target was a HFY commercial convoy carrying rare minerals from the outer rim to the core worlds. The convoy would pass through a nebula sector that would not see another patrol ship for 6 days. The attack went exactly as planned. Drexmore's ships disabled the convoy's escorts and looted the cargo holds without serious resistance. The pirates escaped before any help could arrive, disappearing into the chaotic space around a binary pulsar system that the methodical HFY patrols found too dangerous to search thoroughly. Similar attacks began occurring throughout the galaxy as criminal organizations realized that the security environment had fundamentally changed. The humans had not just been better at catching pirates. They had been better at thinking like pirates, anticipating criminal strategies and adapting their tactics accordingly. Back on Commerce Station Beta Prime, Velnash received reports of the increased piracy and cross-referenced them with her shipping data. The correlation was clear and troubling. As piracy increased in the poorly patrolled sectors, shipping companies began avoiding the most dangerous routes entirely. This created a cascading effect that reduced trade efficiency even further. She composed another report, this time documenting the relationship between security gaps and economic losses. The numbers were stark. Piracy losses had increased by over 200.